7th graders. Today we're going to be working on writing linear equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. So in order to identify the slope and the y-intercept of a linear equation, you must write the equation in slope-intercept form. The slopes of parallel lines are equal. So what that means is if I have y equals 2x plus 5 and y equals 2x plus 10, well, we can see that our slopes are the same. They both have a slope of 2. So that means that these two lines would be parallel. The slopes of perpendicular lines are opposite reciprocals. Opposite meaning if you have a positive, it becomes a negative, or if you have a negative, it becomes a positive. Reciprocal meaning that you have to flip the fraction. So for example, if I have a slope of 5, well, the opposite would be negative, and to flip it, it's really like 5 over 1. It becomes 1 over 5. So negative 1/5 would be its reciprocal. If I had negative 3/4, well, opposite would make it positive, and when I flip it, it would be 4 over 3. So that would be its opposite reciprocal. If I had negative 1/6, well, opposite would make it positive, and when I flip it, it just becomes 6, or 6 over 1. So the first example has a line of 2y equals 6 minus 3x. We need to write an equation of a line that is parallel, an equation that is perpendicular to this given line with a y-intercept of 6. It even gives us our y-intercept. So the first step is to rewrite your equation in slope-intercept form. Well, once again, our equation is 2y equals 6 minus 3x, and our y is already almost alone. All we have to do is divide both sides by 2. And we get y equals 3 minus 3/2 x. And of course, we need to rewrite that so that our constant comes last. So our final equation would be y equals negative 3/2 x plus 3. So there is our answer to A. Second, it wants us to identify the slope and the y-intercept. So the slope to this equation, of course, we know is that coefficient of x, so negative 3/2. Our y-intercept is that constant, so the 3, plus 3, it's positive. So looking at C, it wants us to write the equation of the parallel line of this equation right here, but it tells us that our new equation must have a y-intercept of 6. So when we rewrite it, we want to use the same slope since parallel means m is the same, or our slope is the same. So we have y equals negative 3 over 2x, and now instead of plus 3, we use the slope of our new line, or our y-intercept of our new line, plus 6. Lastly, we need to write the equation of the perpendicular line. Well, once again, we look back to our equation, we say, okay, our slope is negative 3/2. Well, the opposite reciprocal would mean it's a positive 3/2, and then we have to flip the fraction, so it's actually 2/3. So when I write that out, I get y equals positive 2 over 3x, and then we go back to that, what the question was asking with that y-intercept of 6, so just plus 6. All right, your turn. Go ahead and try this one on your own. Pause the video and come back and see how you did. So I already went ahead and rewrote that equation into slope-intercept form for you. We have y equals negative 5 over 3x plus 2 over 3, or 2/3. So our parallel line has the same slope of what we see in our original equation, the negative 5/3. Now our B, we don't want to look at the y-intercept of what we have in our original equation. We want to use the one that it gives us. So our B for our parallel line is 2. When I plug these into my y equals mx plus b equation, I get y equals negative 5/3 x plus 2. That is my equation for my parallel line. My perpendicular line, on the other hand, has a slope of 3/5. We need to take the opposite reciprocal of -5/3. Opposite making it positive, flip the fraction to 3/5. So there's my slope. Once again, using that same y-intercept that it gave me for my parallel line, I have my b equaling 2. I still ignore that y-intercept that I have in my equation, my original equation. So when I plug this in, I get y equals 3/5 x plus 2. And that is my equation to my perpendicular line. All right, so taking it one step further, it wants us to find an equation of the line that passes through the point -3, -5, and is parallel to y equals 3x minus 1. So we know that parallel means that we're going to have a slope of 3. But we don't know what our y-intercept is. It didn't just give it to us. We actually need to use what we learned yesterday in order to figure out what y-intercept our new equation will have. So we have our y equals mx plus b formula, and we're going to plug in what we know. We know that our x is -3, our y is -5, and our slope is 3. So we get -5 equals 3 times -3 plus b. And now I get -9 plus b equals -5. Add 9 to both sides, and I get b equals 4. That is my y-intercept of my new equation for my parallel line. So I have my slope, which stays the same since it's parallel, and my final equation is y equals 3x plus 4, my new y-intercept. That is the equation of the line that passes through this point and is parallel to y equals 3x minus 1. Last example, same idea as what we just did, except for now it's for a perpendicular line. So we get our y-intercept by plugging in our x, our y, and our slope. But we have to be very careful because that's not the slope we want to use. The opposite reciprocal of 2 would mean that we have to make it negative, and 2/1 becomes 1/2. So our slope is -1/2. That's the one that we want to use. So we use our y equals mx plus b equation. We plug in our -5 for y, our -1/2 for m, our 4 for x, and we solve for b. Here we get -2 plus b equals -5 and add 2 to both sides, giving us b equals -3. Finally, we can write our equation that is perpendicular to y equals 2x plus 3 by plugging in our slope and our y-intercept. We get y equals -1/2 x minus 3. That is my final equation for a line that is perpendicular to y equals 2x plus 3.